Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillah. All praise is due to Allah. May Allah's peace and blessings be on the last messenger of Allah. This conference, Peace, the Solution of Humanity, has as a part of the issues it must address is that of racism, being one of the major problems that humanity faces. Racism as a term is relatively modern. It wasn't known in the English language more than a few hundred years ago. It comes from the word race. And that word in itself is a new word. It refers to the major divisions of humanity based on particular physical characteristics. This is according to the Oxford Dictionary. And Oxford goes on to define racism as the belief that each race has certain qualities or abilities, giving rise to the belief that certain races are better than others. If we look into human history, among the ancients, racism was not really existent. You wouldn't find it in the writings, the hieroglyphic writings of ancient Egypt, or in ancient China, or in ancient India. Instead, what you found was family, tribal, or national superiority promoted. A nation or a tribe, having defeated other nations and tribes, considered themselves to be superior. They looked down on those people whom they defeated. And they would set up legal systems where the defeated peoples would be at the bottom levels of the society. In India, where the Aryans came into India and the Dravidians who were here ended up on the bottom level of the caste system, a religious, political, economic system, they ended up on the bottom because they were the defeated people. It so happens that the Aryans were of light complexion and the Dravidians were of dark complexion. So this is where there is an apparent link between what is called the caste system and racism. In China, for example, the Chinese people, those tribes or races which and subjugated, they were held on lower levels in their society. They may have inducted them into the army and used them as a part of their workforce, but they didn't have a specific concept of color, for example, as being a distinguishing characteristic of race. Similarly, Egypt, the ancient record shows that the Egyptian people were a mixture, a blend of colors of people, and those people who became the slaves and the lower levels of the society were the defeated people, whether they may have been light complexion people like the people from the Syrians, from Iraq area, etc., or they were from the south, from the area we now know as Sudan, Ethiopia, these areas. So the people who they ruled over were of varying colors. They didn't themselves identify themselves based on color. So the rulers of ancient Egypt were of different colors. So it was more an issue of nation. You being an Egyptian a born person of that nation, from that family or the tribes that created the Egyptian nation, you are superior to those nations that were defeated. In modern times, when this term of race and racism evolved in the English language and other languages, we find that it became a justification for European colonization of the world. As people spread out from Europe into Africa and into Asia, and they met with other civilizations and they defeated these civilizations, they sought to ideologically identify these civilizations as being inferior to their own, and to justify their enslavement of these people and the destruction of their civilization. They developed this concept of racism, and supported it with the evolutionary theory. So if you see the writings in the 19th century of the evolutionists, or those who were promoting evolutionary theory, especially in the 19th century, and you see the charts which they created of human evolution, you'll see on the lower level of the charts, for example, apes, monkeys, chimpanzees, baboons, and then after that you will see black peoples whose skin complexion were black. Then after that, then there were Chinese people, and then after that were the European people, who were at the top of the evolutionary tree. That's how they portrayed it. So this was a part of an ideology used to justify the subjugation of these people, that they may be elevated through that subjugation. And in time, of course, it produced some of the most worst examples of racism in history, whether in the United States of America, and I'm sure you're all familiar with the various images, etc., that are shown of it, the civil rights movement, response, black American response, white American response to it, to slavery. Also in South Africa, the apartheid system. You know, these are obvious, you could say, children of the early racism of the colonial peoples. If we come from there to the Islamic view, because when we're looking at Islam and racism, we have to look at the Islamic view in this regard. And the Islamic view, first and foremost, comes from the Qur'an. This is our major source of understanding or definition or clarification as to what is on anything. We start with the Qur'an. What we find in the Qur'an are general verses which talk about the variety amongst humankind in such a general way as to make the reader or the listener understand that it is just a part and parcel of the greatness of Allah in His creation. There is nothing special about people's colors because it exists everywhere. So we find, for example, in Surah Ar-Rum, the 30th chapter of the Qur'an, verse 22, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ خَلْقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافُ أَلْسِنَتِكُمْ وَأَلْوَانِكُمْ إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِلْعَالِمِينَ. And among His signs, among Allah's signs, is the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the variations in your languages and your colors. Indeed, in that are signs for those who know. In that are signs